Good morning, everyone. We're here at the Things Conference 2024, I'm sorry. We just kicked off the first talks, and we're also just about to start our first podcast session here. So thank you to everyone joining us here on scene and everyone with us online. And the first panel or talk we are going to have is called Not Invented Here, the biggest issue of the IoT industry. And that is according to Alistair Fulton, Paul Pinault, and Krishna Iyer. And our moderator today is Alix Paultre. So give them a warm welcome. And Alix, off to you.
Thank you very much. Well, gentlemen, I'm really glad that we're having an opportunity to sit and talk about this because development, design, the creation of things is, of course, what we're here for. That's what the companies are here for. That's what the engineers are striving for. What I'd like each of you to do before we get into it a little bit more deeply, I'd like you to say a little bit about your company and your view on the whole IP situation. So, Krishna, how about you first?
Of course. Hi, I'm Krishna. I'm the head of product at the Things Industries. And as we run this conference and also we provide a central part of the LoRaWAN ecosystem, I think we always strive to partner up and use solutions that work, that complement our core values. That's what we do.
Paul?
Hi, so I'm Paul Pinault. My company is DM91, but I'm more known about Dis91, which is my blog and where I'm publishing about IoT and LP1 in particular since a decade now. I work on many proof of concept, like something like 300, something like this in the last 10 years, where this problem about not invented here is quite interesting. I also deploy big projects for large companies that try also to make everything on themselves in this domain. So, interesting topic.
How about you, Alistair?
So, Alistair Fulton, I work for a company called Blues, which is really focused on standardizing connectivity for everything. So we provide a hardware-led software as a service product, which essentially takes any radio you want and hides it behind a JSON API. So you as a developer don't need to understand how the radio works, you don't need to get down into embedded code, you can just sit at JSON API level. And we target mostly companies that make stuff. So our customers tend to be companies that make commercial refrigeration or earth-moving equipment or that kind of thing. So, and our position on I would say on IP and not invented here overall, interoperability has been the real Achilles heel of the IoT. I think the fact that we have diverged and gone in different directions, even within the LoRaWAN ecosystem that I've been part of for many years, has caused nothing but pain for our customers. And so, it doesn't mean that everything has to be the same. There needs to be space for people to differentiate and innovate, but the interfaces between each of the layers need to be very standardized, and that drives interoperability and helps our customers at the end of the day.
Yep. That is an excellent point, Alistair, because, and I'll let you each comment on that in a second, because I want to tee it up a little bit more as a bigger question, give it some facets, okay? Because I do see that with IP there are three facets in my humble opinion. You've got the need of the industry to standardize, and the interfaces, especially because my philosophy, and you can expand on that, is you could have magic fairies inside the box, but the outside of the box has to communicate with the other guys outside of his box and his magic fairies. So you can have whatever proprietary technology you want in the boxes as long as they can talk to each other. So that's one aspect. But then the other aspect is there's pride in there.
Yes.
I invented this. Okay, maybe their solution might be better, but I invented this and I get to keep it and it's proprietary now and maybe it'll help me keep my customers, which that's also then a double-edged sword. What do you think, Krishna?
Yeah, well, as a product manager, I think there's always a distinction between a technology and a product. And a product actually is something that solves a problem. So if your technology happens to map one-on-one to the problem, then by all means. But it's almost always never the case that's the case. So you have to map things around to make it a product.
How about you, Paul? What are your thoughts on that?
I think that's for every technology. When you look at the adoption curve, so you have in your life cycle, basically you have all the first parts, which is mostly addressed by a technician, more than by a product team and for covering a special need. And for many years, we have been more in the adoption phase, where the innovation through IoT is mostly managed by innovation team, by IT teams, so by technician, that is more looking at the technology itself than looking at the product and what we can do, and that's one of the big issues we faced. Yeah.
Alistair, did you have any follow-up thoughts on that?
We're all engineers, and engineers tend to be the problem. By definition, there's a drive always to innovate and come up with new things. And now sometimes that drive is enhanced by VC money that wants to, secure a big exit. Sometimes it's enhanced by a desire to, as you say, keep your customers. And generally, customers don't really appreciate being kept against their will. But ultimately, it is that difference between thinking about a product and thinking about technology. Actually focusing on what customers need and want. If we ask customers, they want interoperability, they don't want to be tied in, they want all the boxes to work with each other, and particularly in the IoT, which is made up largely of small vendors. If you're a large company and you're going to deploy an at-scale solution, by definition, you don't want to buy everything from one vendor.
Yep.
And by definition, you need interoperability. And if that interoperability isn't there, you see what customers do. They wait. They wait until it comes. And that's what's really held up, I think, adoption of a lot of sectors of the IoT.
Well, and that's a very good point to bring up, because sometimes I hear when I talk to people about LoRa, because there are elements of LoRa that are proprietary to certain organizations like Semtech, there are some people who are hesitant to get into it just because portions of the technology are proprietary. Krishna, how much have you heard from that, being from the things?
That's a lot, and the only thing is, you have to. People want to own the entire chain, which is fine, but it's a trade-off. So there are no solutions, only trade-offs. So up to what point do you want to control the whole chain? And if it's not Semtech with LoRa, then you have to go with Qualcomm for their Bluetooth, or it doesn't matter. Somebody else will own the chips regardless. So, are you building solutions or are you building chips? That's really the question.
Speaking of solutions, Paul?
In my point of view, I'm not sure that the proprietary part is something really important. It's an argument we hear, but in fact, there's no technology in LP1s that are not proprietary of someone. I mean, Sigfox is one company, MyOT is Fraunhofer proprietary, intellectual proprietary, LoRa is Semtech. So basically, it's not really the question. What I've seen more in the market is, with these different technologies, is that there is an hesitation, because we had a long discussion about who is going to win, like considering that one technology and the other are all equal, which is totally wrong. They all have different sweet spots and different use cases. And I think we lost something like 3 to 5 years, because company was saying, Sigfox, not for this reason, but I'm not sure, maybe LoRaWAN, and now we have MyOT, so they are every time questioning, and they also NB-IoT and LTM, so the panel is large. The technology is complex behind all of this, and globally the communication of the ecosystem is not really good. Like fighting each other instead of working all together to make a bigger market. And that's, I think, the main break on the market currently, more than the proprietary things.
Excellent points, Paul. And well, and it makes you think, because I do believe that there is a deeper level to this as well, because the IoT by nature is multidisciplined, multimodal. Yeah. Once upon a time, people thought, oh yeah, we'll eventually have one lingua franca for everything and one radio to rule them all. And it's come to a reality that, no, we're just going to have devices that can speak multiple languages. Yeah. Because it does benefit you to have a short range high bandwidth, a short range low bandwidth, a long range high bandwidth, a long range low bandwidth. And then you have to think about power management and the logic management and sensor integration. So almost by definition, an IoT device demands collaboration, right? So let you start first, Krishna. What do you think as far as that aspect of it, that we're in a world that demands collaboration in a lot of ways, but companies are loath to give up information?
Yeah, that's always a problem. But if you look, let's say, at the automotive industry, they introduced a concept called AutoSAR, where you have like an interface layer and then you can innovate on top of it. But this is definitely a problem, and if the ultimate solution, so I always think from a product perspective, if your end result can be done through one technology, you should just do it. The problem is that when you compound requirements and say, my product has to do this, that's the main job, measure this thing, but also I need to do this, and I need to do this, and I need to do this. If you start adding more requirements, then the logical solution seems to be we need to put everything on there, but that's probably not necessary.
Paul?
One of the difficulty in that area, I think all that skills that are required, is that it's hard to find all the skills in traditional industries. I work for big industries that are not specialists in hardware, but they have a large team in software. And when you start an IoT project, so basically the software team are mastering what they are doing, and that's really great. But it's really complicated to have this team understanding the hardware specificity, the product design, and I would think about more of the mechanical part of the product itself. And basically, they underestimate the complexity of this part. And as we say, I mean, the problem of not made here is that the customer want to, or the industrial want to master all the chain to understand it at the beginning. And so if there is a part of the chain you do not master, like the electronic and physical design part, basically you don't spend a lot of energy, you quickly stop your project because it's not efficient as you're expected and or something like this. And that's one of the pitfalls, I think, is to not trust working with specialists on that domain that would help to make a good design and a good product at the end and succeed in achieving the business objective you had at the beginning. That's one of the difficulties.
Did you have anything you wanted to add, Alistair, on that?
Yeah, I mean, I'll go back to your prior question, actually. The topic of LoRa, as you know, is quite close to my heart, having spent a number of years running Semtech's IoT division. And you noted there that, yes, there is a common IP layer in LoRaWAN, which means every radio fundamentally is the same, which actually creates an environment where interoperability gets a little bit easier. But the thing that I think we did, and you see it around you today, is open up the protocol layer and open up the ecosystem. Because while Semtech's very good at designing radio chips, it's not a company it's a silicon company, so it's not naturally placed to understand customer needs, to understand the needs of the market, and that's what's been driving the protocol layer through an organization called the LoRa Alliance over the course of the last however many years, 8 years or so. So it's a delicate balance is the point that I'm trying to make. You know, the interoperability and consistency and homogeneity can be, very similar things. But if you try to avoid fragmentation, where do you actually introduce, differentiation? Where do you keep things the same? There are other technologies, and this is the point that you guys were making. There's a new technology every year, IoT, etc. I think the problem that customers have had for many years is this massive, bewildering range of choice that they're faced with at every single layer of the stack. I mean, there's 15 different networks you can pick between. Now there's satellite coming along. Never mind the hardware itself on the endpoint. And I think we as an industry have been carried away by our, as I said, our engineering, instincts to constantly reinvent. When the tools that we have today, the ones that are available, do the job well enough. And that's what customers need. They need the job to be done well enough, they need the tools to be easy to use, and they need the tools to have lots of friends, so there are lots of companies that they can choose between when looking for a vendor.
Well, that is a good point you bring up, Alistair. You think about it, Krishna, would a hardware consortium element to the things, or to even the LoRa Association Alliance, there is open shared IP on the code side. Maybe they should start a hardware consortium, buy or reinvent the core technologies on the hardware side, so that way your hardware is also open, completely open, as opposed to the piecemeal situation that we have now. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that would be really nice to have, but my point really is that there's the old saying, too much trust is foolishness, too much distrust is a tragedy. You have to walk the line somewhere. So there has to be a point where companies decide, this is our limit, this is where we are going to, in the abstraction layer, stop, and beyond this, we're going to partner with somebody. And it's really specialized and collaborate. So if you're really focused on what your product is, and your core competence is, for the rest, just work with other people. I think that's really how it works.
That's an excellent point. But what are your thoughts on that, Paul?
I don't see a really big blocking point around this. As I say, I mean, most of the technology have an IP behind. It's the same thing for Bluetooth. It was the same thing for Wi-Fi. I mean, globally, most of the technology have an IP. What's good in my point of view with LoRa is that basically your IP is really at the low level and inside the chip. So it's transparent. I would say. There is multiple founder also, so even if there is an IP, there is not only one founder. So, yeah, it's yeah. I don't see it as the issue is there. The advantages of having an IP like this is basically it's finance also the ecosystem. It's finance the research. So Semtech is creating new product and improving the technology thanks also to this IP they have. So currently, I don't see that as something which is quite blocking for the market. Yeah.
Well, as I was saying, I mean, I have had people tell me directly that because of that proprietary aspect, they don't want to get into low rod. So that's why I was curious about, you know, the need for potential need, obviously, because there are quite a few hurdles between having that idea and actually, you know, realizing it.
What I mean is, inside the company, they are locked by Oracle, by IBM, by Microsoft. They are all going to a cloud and using managed services which are specific to every cloud. So if the question of IP was a blocking point in the industry, the ecosystem would be totally different in the IT environment. So I don't really, I mean, it's an argument we hear.
Yeah.
Does it really the reason why they are not developing the project? I don't think so, for real.
What are your thoughts on that, Alistair?
I think the ideal world for customers is diversity of supply and homogeneity of IP. And I think that the path that Semtech has followed is one of licensing. And I think that's something that as LoRaWAN and LoRa have become, you know, I think at this point we can credibly say that LoRaWAN is the leading low-power wireless solution for IoT. Now that the technology has reached that level of adoption, you know, I don't work with Semtech anymore, I don't run the business anymore, but I would hope to see more licensing and opening up the IP in that way so that other companies, and you see what STMicro has done with the LoRa IP. Yep. They've built the STM32WL, hugely versatile platform. We actually use that in our own product. More companies bringing new ideas to how to package the IP, how to evolve the IP. It's a very similar philosophy to the one that was followed at the protocol layer. Get other people who are knowledgeable in the industry involved and drive, you know, evolution that way whilst retaining, you know, the things that are the same, that actually support customers and help customers build interoperable solutions from multi-vendors.
Got it. So now, Paul, I'll let you lead off on this one. Are there instances that you can think of where not invented here was a problem in your development? Or were there instances where pushing that aside helped you? In other words, was it a case where you were able to maintain your proprietary technology and you were able to make your development work? Or were you forced to wind up using someone else's tech in your design after all?
Not sure.
Like, you know what I mean? In other words, the whole not invented thing here, the whole aspect of doing it all yourself, has that, and you mentioned that something that you support in that sense. Have you ever had any issues with development because of that?
Oh, I think the main issue is, in fact, when you try to do everything yourself and you start from nothing, because, I mean, you usually start doing everything on yourself because you want to learn. So basically meaning that you're not really an expert of it. And so the problem is that you find all the pitfalls that other companies have already made, and so you are losing time. And the impact of this is on a IoT project. It makes a big delay on the IoT transformation in the companies. I really see IoT transformation as a part of the digital transformation. So it's all about transforming your processes and being more efficient long-term thanks to devices that are deployed and report data. And every time you start doing something by yourself and fail, delay by 1 or 2 years your transformation. And so it has a big impact in terms of business for the company that runs that direction. And the other impact it has is most of the value, in fact, is extracted from the ecosystem. Like you contact a small company for getting advice, for doing POC, for getting some prototypes, but you never transfer a lot of value to them. You extract a lot of information for a small price, but as soon as you get the information, you stop working with them and you do by yourself. And so at the end, the big company do not progress in their transformation, and the small company do not succeed and make enough money to have a high quality or well-developed services. And so all of this is really slowing down the IoT ecosystem and the IoT transformation everywhere. Yeah.
Agreed. What do you think, Krishna? What are your thoughts?
Most IoT projects, especially in bigger companies, they have a very short time window to succeed. It's usually one or two enthusiasts who want to please their boss about this IoT, let's do it. Or there's some sort of corporate goals behind it. And if you miss that window, IoT is just shelved, and the rest of the ecosystem suffers because of it.
Yeah. Alistair?
Yeah, at Blues we say that DIY is our best sales tool because most of our customers have tried and failed. And sadly, a lot of customers start out thinking that the connectivity part of IoT is easy. That's partly because as an industry, we've been telling them that for 20 years, when it's nowhere close to easy. So we have a lot of customers who've been through the 12, 18-month cycle of trying to figure out how to build the hardware, having to spin it again. And they find Blues and they're in the market in 3 months' time. So, I mean, it's the same point that you were making. That kind of desire to, my use case is special, my problem is special, I'm going to build a special thing to solve my special problem. That desire, which is an engineering mindset, has only resulted in significant delay in deployment of the very technologies that we need to address climate change. And we are all paying the price of that. So as an industry, I think we've got a real responsibility to try and take those hard pieces and make them really simple so that customers can actually focus on what they're going to do with the data, how to improve their operations, increase efficiency, and so on.
Yes, Paul.
One thing we can add also is if we look at the tracking business, which is a big use case in IoT, if you look at the device on the market, you're going to see that, for example, in the Sigfox ecosystem, or it might be the same thing for LoRaWAN, you have something like 80 different trackers that exist. And when you look at the history of these trackers, in fact, most of them are coming from not invented there. I mean that there were trackers on the market at the beginning, but instead of using them for deployment at Renault, Total, Michelin, I mean all these big companies, basically it's exactly they rebuild it. They prefer to take their own device and make it, and they had in a plan to deploy 100,000, something like this, but usually they just deploy 1,000.
Yeah.
And as a consequence, they propose to the companies that built the tracker to sell it on its own. And so at the end, you have something like 80 trackers on the market because they always have a little difference compared to what exists, and so this is why they need
black,
a
not white.
Yeah. And so at the end, no one is selling enough tracker to become bigger because you have so much competition on that area. And most of them are died or dying because of the diversity of device. But in fact, they all address the same use case. And I think that 10 would cover exactly all the need of everyone.
Well, you know, Paul, it really is such a deep and multifaceted issue. You know, like let's look at something. We're almost out of time, so unfortunately we can't really go into anything deeper at this point. But I would love to have talked about things like imagine the squabbling going on when they're doing the matter, negotiations and the like. But we've got a couple of minutes. Everybody, just give me one last thought on the whole issue of not invented here. Pro or against? I know, Paul, you're a little bit for it, but tell me what you think of it. One last line.
Well, as a company, you should focus on what's your core and then just partner with everybody else who does everything else you need.
Paul?
Yeah, I think it's normal movement. It's not specific to IoT. If you look at AI, it's the same thing. Currently, everyone is trying to rebuild a model instead of using what exists, basically. So it's a normal movement. And my point is it's really long for IoT. And now the message is, okay, there is solution provider. Yeah, go to solution provider. If IoT is transforming your core business, it makes sense to master it and to do it yourself. But most of the IoT currently is deployment of facilities or like monitoring of meeting room or things like this. You don't have to invent anything on this. Solution exists on the market and just go straight.
I think the desire to overcome not invented here is what's made LoRaWAN successful. And I think the things industries have actually kind of really led the way in that regard. And the LoRaWAN ecosystem as a whole, unlike many other connectivity ecosystems is actually one that's characterized by cooperation, working together, partnership. And the ecosystem came to that conclusion itself faster than any other ecosystem. So we went through maybe 2, 3 years, 4 years where the ecosystem was trying to figure out where were they strong, where were they going to make money, and there was quite a lot of friction. I'd say that stopped around 2018, 2017, and that coincidentally was when the Things guys really started up, and Vinka and Johan started to preach what they're still preaching today, which is build it together, work together. If you don't work together, you're not helping customers and you're not helping yourself.
Agreed. But then again, as Paul said, there are other points to consider, and as Krishna said, it's not an easy thing to do. Thank you, gentlemen. I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to us on this busy event. I hope that the audience got something out of it, and thank you for taking the time.
Awesome.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you, gentlemen. That was really